Would you like to know when and what to invest in? Here is the truth about the market and investing. The truth is that the market doesn't care about the truth. It moves based on the feelings. Someone once said something to me that I will never forget. Feelings are neither right or not, they are just are. And that's how the market has moved and moves because it does, based on people's feelings, which are neither right or wrong, they are just are. Welcome back to the channel. For those who don't know me, my name is Vitan and I left my job as a software engineer to start my own business. Today's video we will talk about what's happening on the market, why investors says it will go from bad to worse, and how you can take advantage of this opportunity. We will discuss investing, bonds, and especially the Chinese giant Evergrande. So let's begin. In this video we will talk about these topics. How many apartments does Evergrande own? Evergrande's bondholders. Credit default swap index. Tether and Evergrande. What will the Chinese government do? Short investment summary. Information about Evergrande. Some weeks ago the market took a massive dive because of Evergrande. I know you've heard the story a million times before, still I will go deep in this video because Evergrande, one of the biggest Chinese real estate developers, is so big and some people even call them the Chinese Lehman Brothers. This is scary because if you remember back in 2008 and the Lehman Brothers collapsed, it helped trigger the 2008 global financial crisis. So maybe Evergrande could trigger the next one. So let's talk about the real estate just to give us some context. Home ownership rates are about 65.4 in the USA, but over 90% in China. This is because it's very culturally and socially significant to own a house there. So you can see how profitable it can be a real estate developer. Evergrande has become the second bigger real estate developer in China with over 1,300 projects in 280 cities. They owe $300 billion, which is roughly 2% of China's national GDP, which doesn't sound a lot until you realize real estate makes up about 29% of their GDP. Knowing how important real estate is to the Chinese economy, Evergrande was able to create a perfect money planning plan. Step 1. Build and pre-sell expensive homes and apartments at overinflated values for maximum profit. Step number 2. Use the profit we made from selling very expensive homes that increased their values to build even more. Step 3. Before we finish building the current project, start the pre-sale of the next one at overly appraised value for even more profit. And step 4. Profit. How many apartments Evergrande owe? Evergrande owes 1.6 million apartments because many people have put down a cash deposit to generate interest. Still, they are offered apartments at up to 50% discount instead of the interest payments. So the big question is, can Evergrande survive and pay their own bills? Because if they can't, the worry is that it could trigger the next financial crisis. So let me just see if I can answer this question in the next section and share what I know so far. Just before we continue, I want to remind you to subscribe my channel if you haven't done that yet by pressing up the red button and then the bell to receive notifications for watching the helpful videos I upload. I'm about to do a little bit of math. I'm going to try to look at the debt held by someone of Evergrande's bondholders. This is important because these bondholders lend bonds to the company. How dependent are they and how big is their exposure? Because if we find out that Evergrande would fail, how bad would be for these companies? 3. Evergrande bondholders. This isn't complete data, these are the top 4 bondholders of Evergrande. Now, let's see if these companies are independent companies that don't need any grant or Evergrande to remain Evergrande, as Ashmore Group has AUM of $86 million. By the way, AUM means asset under management. So they have $433 million worth of bonds, which represents only half of the percent worth of their holding. But then we have BlackRock with $9.5 trillion worth AUM and $385 million worth of bonds from Evergrande, which is only 0.004% of their holding. Then we have UBS Group, which has about 2.6 trillion AUM and 275 million worth of bonds, which is about 0.01% of their holding. And then we have HSBC with 621 billion AUM and only 0.04 exposure. So what does this mean? This means I was right when I said the market moves in ways based on emotions. So that about the stock of BlackRock, it lost nearly 7% of its value in just a few days when its exposure to Evergrande was only 0.004%. That's true for all these other companies which have small exposure. So none of them depends on Evergrande for income and anything else. If Evergrande fails, it will be very unfortunate for people living in China, because that will affect over 90% of people real estate portfolios. Still, for people living outside of China, none of this should make a difference. 4. Credit Default Swap Index. So there is something called Credit Default Swap Index that sounds really familiar, because they are probably heard about it since 2008 when everyone talked about it. Credit default swap are some kind of insurance that companies can take out to protect their investment. So I am a company like BlackRock and I am bondholder of Evergrande bonds. I am promised to be paid interest. In this case from Evergrande, I may say myself, these guys are in trouble. They may not be able to pay me interest, so I want to protect my investment. I might want to buy a credit default swap, and the reason that these credit default swaps are important is that it's equivalent of a life insurance policy. So let me show you this index. On the 20th of September, this chart jumps up crazily. This means the price of the credit default swap is going up. Typically, this is a concern, but only when the price hits about 50. So the days after it starts to go up slowly, that shows that companies have stopped buying life insurance. If you are interested in real estate investigation, watch my video about real estate and why the houses will be so much expensive after 10 years. Number 5. Tether and Evergrande. Now let's talk about crypto, because there is a new rumor that appears, the rumor between Evergrande and Tether. As Evergrande fate happens, people in crypto will what they do best: spread fear, uncertainty and doubt. Tether, the coin that was supposed to be backed by assets, held a significant amount of Evergrande's bonds. So if you think about it, if Evergrande's bonds become worthless, or at least worth less than Tether, which is supposed to be backed by $1 or $1 worth of asset for every dollar they create, could be in a lot of trouble. Tether has started that they don't own any Evergrande bonds, but time will tell if that's actually true. But meantime, here is my personal truth, but everything goes on. Personally, I believe this is completely overblown, considering that we know today, unless of course we find out something new. Number 6. What will the Chinese government do? The real risk for the people living in China, and I'm crossing my finger and hoping they get through this. On the one hand, if the government let Evergrande collapse, that could affect as many as 90% of citizens living in China and a ton of the real estate market, which is terrible. And the insight of the government may have do something like is just to make an example that extreme capitalism is bad and leverage and debt are really not good. On the other hand, truth, if they do step and save Evergrande, that could be a signal the market has extreme leverage is totally fine. I will be very happy to see what you think about how the Chinese government will act in this situation. Write this at the comments of my videos, please. Number 7. Investment summary. So while everyone is in panic about what's going on, I am oriented in crypto. There are a lot of sophisticated investors that can get insider data and information faster than you and I will ever have, and that's the reason it's hard to take profit from that opportunity. Crypto isn't for everyone, especially if you will retire soon, because it is a minimum of 10 years investment plan. But if you have time before reaching 75 years like me, it will make more money in the long term. So that was today's video. I hope to inform, I shared with you what's happening. Here you can watch my last video. Stay positive and don't buy stocks impulsively. Bye for now.